Just so there's no misunderstandings here, I am going to be rating this fresh because on Rotten Tomatoes, your two options are fresh or rotten. But in going into the specifics, my feedback is mixed, so if you cannot handle the latest franchise movie having some criticisms thrown at it, enter at your own peril.
I gotta fix whatever this is right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, don't cry. Don't cry. Your tears. It smells so bad.
Hi, I'm Lady Genevieve, and on my channel I talk about entertainment media. Today's video is going to be a mostly spoiler-free review of Spider-Man Brand New Day, but we are also going to talk in a few circles around some of the bigger things in this story. We will do broad feedback and mostly things in the first half of the story first, and then we will do a section where I will talk circles around things from the second half, the ending, the future of the story, things of that nature. We're not going into full spoilers in this review. If there's anything more I want to say about this, I will do so in the end of the month video over on my Patreon. For Brand New Day, this story is at its best when it leans into the darker emotional and psychological dimensions of its premise, but it can never quite reach its full potential because it's ultimately beholden to the larger franchise machine. If you are someone who already loves the MCU with little to no complaints about how the MCU is doing right now, if you think all of this era of Spider-Man movies are fantastic, my best guess is that you will love this movie. Overall, it's better than the three that came before it. If you are someone that has superhero fatigue and you want something completely different from the onslaught we have all been subjected to for the last 15 to 20 years of superhero movies, and I suppose television series as well, I don't know if this movie is going to be different enough to subvert your expectations. Maybe you will have a better go of it when Clayface comes out, but I don't know for sure because I haven't seen that film yet. For anyone who needs a quick reminder, this Spider-Man film, Brand New Day, is following the fallout of the finale of No Way Home. Most importantly, of that particular storyline, Tom Holland's Peter Parker opted to have Doctor Strange do his corny finger magic so that everyone who knew him would forget about him. Following this, he's been living mostly in isolation, away from the love and camaraderie of all the people he was closest to pre-mass memory wipe. Now in Brand New Day, when we catch up with Peter, he's very sad. There is still a lot of grief over losing his Aunt May, and all of his other loved ones that now don't know who he is. And whenever this film leans into those consequences, the fallout, the turmoil, it makes for an above-average superhero film, relative to the abysmal standard of IP franchise filmmaking we see in today's highly corporate market. Whenever they leaned into Peter's suffering, I started to buy into the film more than I expected. They didn't maintain that investment for me consistently, but I will hold off on explaining a bit of why that is in the second portion of this review. One of the concerns I had going into this film was whether or not it was going to be overcrowded as far as characters go. There is a pungent desperation in this franchise nowadays to constantly throw in more characters simply for the sake of having the audience point in recognition or giddiness at what a previously established or new recognizable character name is going to do. Not even in the film that they're watching, but in the 50-11 films and series that will inevitably follow thereafter. For the most part, Brand New Day didn't feel overcrowded to the degree that I was worried about. Given the struggles Peter Parker is going through, a fair bit of the film is spent with him, and he's struggling to deal with that without as much involvement from other people. There is a bit of an interaction with people like Jon Bernthal's Frank Castle. That relationship was marketed in the trailer as something more so frivolous and annoying. For me as a viewer, it came across as gimmicky in how it was presented in the marketing, particularly in the tone of its delivery. But once you see their relationship in full, it worked very well. It felt believable and had a lot more dimension to it in a way that I was pleasantly surprised by. They already showed that Mark Ruffalo was going to be in this film as well. The way that Peter seeks him out and why he's doing so felt like something that made sense relative to the storyline that Peter was going through. Visually, the film looks better than a fair bit of the IP franchise slop we see nowadays, though there are still clockable VFX shots where you will see Tom Holland or whichever actor and you can tell 100% that they are not wherever they're currently supposed to be. Translation, it's an actor standing in front of a green or blue screen. But there is also a lot of shots of actors doing scenes in spaces that are real, and whenever that's the case, it helps to make the story and stakes feel more tangible and lived in. You do not have the ongoing issue that other superhero films have had as of late, where a climactic battle happens in a sea of gray sludge that you're supposed to pretend looks good when it's actually one of the most hideous things you've ever seen in your movie-going life. This film does not do that. The action overall, I would say, is decent. It's not as egregiously choppy in how it's edited together. However, I will say that the way that they showed that glimpse of the fight between Spider-Man and the Hand in the film's trailer, I was disappointed that we didn't get more of that throughout the film. It wasn't bad when you actually saw what happened, but compared to what I was expecting, it came across like they just took the coolest looking shot and used it as bait to make the audience think that that was going to be the style of the action of the film overall. Now, I am not someone that's terminally online in superhero media spaces nowadays. My social media algorithms show me things like global geopolitical ongoings and animal rescue groups in West Asia and North Africa. That is how I got my second cat. She is from Lebanon, and I will put the donation link in Instagram of her rescue group in the pinned comment of this video because they just brought in a new kitten who needs a lot of help. All of that to say, I don't know if there was already a ton of information available about every character and every storyline that was going to be in Brand New Day before it was released to us, the press, to see at a press screening. I didn't see any of that discourse if it was happening, which I assume that it was. Whether or not it was accurate, I don't know. It could have just been speculation. I wasn't thinking about whether or not the Hand were going to be the main villain of this story. I really hadn't given it that much thought. I don't think I even made a guess as to who the main villain was. I knew that we would be picking up where we left off, where Peter is sad, that MJ and Ed don't know him, and that was about it. I really wasn't pondering much about this film's story further than that. I would say that there is a bit more of a creative style and pizzazz to Brand New Day than what I'm used to seeing from a lot of today's franchise films. Oftentimes, franchise films today come across as being the sort of thing that gets directed by either a company man, or even if you do hire a proper director, the corporate higher-ups will interfere with the film to such an extent that you don't actually get to see the distinct stamp of whichever filmmaker is directing it, or at least is listed as having directed it. This feels like they actually gave a bit more room than they usually do for the director to be more distinct and attempt to disrupt the corporate monotony.
This is a smokeless garden.
Disruption.
As someone who is very skeptical of this franchise and a lot of the big 9-figure production budget movies that get released nowadays, this had multiple things working well for it. So if we are going on half-point increments, for now, I'm going to say that my score lands at 3.5 out of 5. Given how low I rate most of these live-action franchise films nowadays, this is a great score for me to be giving it, if you care about scores anyway. I usually don't share scores, by the way. You've probably noticed that if you watch me regularly. If you're already excited about the film, I think you're really going to love it. And between this and the Odyssey releasing right now, I'm glad that we are getting successful theatrical releases that are keeping the cinemas open and healthy to as much of an extent as they can right now. I worry about the cinemas a lot, and I'm valid to worry when we have these streaming executives outright admitting on the record that they want to destroy the cinemas.
Demon! I will kill you as many times as I have to.
Now I want to talk about some of the second half elements of the story, or some elements of the story with a bit more specificity. Though, as I've already said, I'm not going to be doing any major plot reveals with a lot of details. When the film begins, we are introduced to a villain that is body hopping. Whenever Peter is dealing with them, they're inhabiting numerous different people, and there was something really cool and refreshing about this. It was spooky. The threat of this villain being able to body hop like that, it meant that the threat could be anyone. And I found that to be refreshing. It was nice, it was different, it was unusual. However, once we reached a point of explaining more information about that foe, I was underwhelmed. It wasn't bad, but it was working for me more when we were in the earlier portion of that part of the story. There is a threat that we explore more in the second half of the story that, for me personally, played in the larger narrative in such a way that I felt as though if you really wanted that to be explored, I would have rather they had gotten into that more or less right from the beginning. It felt like they wanted to simply delay that material so that they could introduce it to the audience as a reveal, but it didn't land for me as a reveal. Listen, I'm a whodunit girly. I want a lot more of an interesting, engaging reveal than what that ended up being. This is part of the story that's difficult to talk about without spoilers, so my feedback probably isn't landing with everyone that's watching this early, especially if you haven't seen the story yet. But if you have seen it, and this is after it's released to everyone, then maybe you will know what I'm talking about. And finally, there is a foe that does things that are so evil, heinous, nefarious, and I was so exasperated by how that part of the story finished in the movie because it wasn't even a real ending. There was absolutely no resolution, conclusion, or catharsis to what that particular foe did, and it left me with a very negative impression in finishing the film because instead of me focusing on the parts of Brand New Day that were done well and that I do rate well in my feedback, I was served yet another harsh reminder that the stakes of these stories do not matter. Because more often than not, these movies are not actually movies. They are episodes in the endless television series that is the MCU as a franchise. Everything has to set something up, to set something up, to set something up, so that you will keep watching things with hardly any lasting or meaningful consequences or conclusions. If they address this foe in some future film and they give that foe the day that they deserve,
Death.
maybe I will enjoy that, but it won't change the fact that this movie does not have a real ending. There is, however, an emotional breakthrough for Peter, but insofar as the conflict happening with Peter that is external, everything is left open and set up for more franchise movies with overworked, underpaid VFX artists. Oh, fantastic.
Hello, this is fraud. On a global scale.
Peter's internal emotional arc is one of the more satisfying parts of the story, as is the way that he navigates whether or not to reconnect with MJ and Ned. Any and all scenes involving them as a trio, or within that trio if they split off in pairs at various points, that was all very charming and endearing to watch. If the selling point of this portion of this franchise for you as a viewer is this trio, I would say that you're going to like this film. It's a 2.5-hour runtime, so a fair bit of that isn't material of them interacting, but when they are together, you will enjoy yourself. There is a post-credit scene, or a post-credit snippet, I suppose we could call it. It's not much, informationally speaking, but there is something there. So if you are a runner who doesn't sit through credits, you are going to miss this if you go ahead and do a runner out of the cinema. The other nitpick I would say that I can share, even in an early review such as this, is that if you've seen the trailer, you know that Peter is experiencing some sort of a transformation in his body with his powers. These changes are chaotic and interfere with his ability to do Spider-Man things, because, well, how are you supposed to fight crime if your powers are malfunctioning? Well, during this issue with his powers, he has an incident that causes an accident involving cops, and Brand New Day really had the cheek, the nerve, the audacity, and the gumption to try to play that moment as an emotional beat where the audience is meant to be worried for the well-being of the cops. And that was such a nasty reminder that this franchise has a very long established history of doing propaganda coordination and advertisements. And all of the investment I had been building in my experience of watching the film up until that point, it was like Poseidon showed up and removed all of the wind I needed from my sails. I was ready to curse at the film screen in Na'vi.
The chocolate Leo. If I had the fucking pillar in my head.
Run, Piggy, run!
And if that weren't enough, they have this incessant running gag of Peter coordinating with his computer system, which feels like an AI advertisement. It felt very sponsored by Palantir. He's out here ordering facial scans using surveillance footage from all over the city. Did we not remember the Batman movie that Christopher Nolan did, where it was an enormous ethical dilemma whether or not Batman should use mass surveillance like that? And the takeaway of that was Yes, you did it once, but it doesn't matter if it helped you to complete the job, because ultimately it's a horrible and morally repugnant thing, so let's destroy it. Law enforcement can hack into your Ring cameras, and you all are just putting them into your neighborhood like it's nothing.
Yeah, I got you. I got you on camera. You on candid camera now.
Things like this ensure that regardless of how charming that core trio is, Peter and MJ and Ned, I will not watch this film again unless it's a work thing for research. Recreationally speaking, I'm just not interested. It was good in many ways, but the propaganda really soured a lot of that for me. I will, however, be seeing The Odyssey again, and luckily I have plenty of time for that because it's doing so well that it will not be leaving cinemas anytime soon.
You're gonna need to decide, are you gonna step up for your fellow countrywoman? You gonna plug or you gonna play?
No, neither.